Please, would you welcome on stage Patricia McKenna.
This one? Is that working? Oh, okay. I understand. Well, I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I don't speak Danish. I wish I did. So I'm going to try and speak slowly because normally I have a tendency to speak very fast. First of all, for the People's Movement, it's 50 years in existence. I mean, that's a huge credit to the people of Denmark. And I only got to meet people from the People's Movement later on, not at the beginning, but I know from friends in Ireland, this was before I was old enough to vote, the People's Movement were helping people in Ireland in the various referendums on the EU. The first one was on accession to the EU. And I know that the People's Movement helped the Irish campaign. And as I said, that was before my time in voting. Secondly, then, the Single European Act, and that's when I first met people from the People's Movement, and from then you are a great friend of mine and of Ireland. You have been actually instrumental in keeping the campaign in Ireland going, in helping with all of the work we did and all of the campaigns. The People's Movement have been so important to us, and that's why it is extremely sad that at this moment you do not have a member in the European Parliament. I think that is the biggest tragedy for the EU critical movement, because you were so important. You gave information not just to people in Ireland, but to people in other EU countries as well. And I don't think you appreciate how important you have been in keeping the EU critical movement alive. And when I say EU critical movement, I'm talking about the EU critical movement that's not extremist in relation to being racist or any of those issues. It's about the People's Movement looking at democracy, at accountability, and most important for me, demilitarisation, and to ensure no support for the arms industries. And I hope that you can succeed in keeping the People's Movement going, and that in the next European Parliament you will have another member, because it's not just important for you, but it's important for the whole of the EU. It's important to get the message out that the EU is not as it's presented. It's not the perfect panacea for everything. In fact, far from it. At this moment, I know you're involved in a referendum campaign. Now, first of all, I would say in relation to your government putting this to the people at this moment in time, it's a cynical move, in my opinion. Now, we cannot forget what's going on in the Ukraine, and nobody is condoning what Russia is doing. It's a crime, full stop. So are all wars a crime. Wars, whether it be in Yemen or anywhere else, and we're fueling and funding those. And for your government at this moment, of course, politicians never miss a crisis to push through something they want, and this is a crisis that they are exploiting to the last for cynical reasons. It's got nothing to do with the current crisis, because you're already a member of NATO. It's to do with ensuring that the EU can forge ahead with its militarisation, and with ensuring that the arms industries are benefiting from the creation of the EU in the first place. And that's what's happening. And I just want to mention a few things. First, as well, I could say that the EU member states are not without blood on their hands in relation to the current crisis in the Ukraine. In 2020, France was still sending weapons to Russia. So they're all wringing their hands now saying, oh, this is terrible. But they knew, and they still did it, because it was to the benefit of the arms industries. Now, the key thing, you had no referendum on the Lisbon Treaty here. And I suppose that's because the Lisbon Treaty contains the final solution in relation to the EU. It ensures that the EU can forge ahead. We have seen in Ireland, a so-called neutral country, we're participating in PESCO, we're participating in the European Defence Agency, and we're participating in most of the EU military activities as such, supposedly that are have a UN mandate. But what's happening is our governments have let us down. They broke up their promises. I understand that your government at the moment is proposing legislation. I don't think it's finalised at the moment, but from what I've heard from speaking to people is that it will have some sort of comments, not in the actual text of the legislation itself, but comments afterwards, promising a referendum on an EU army, and also on the issue of common defence, because as far as I know, supranational actions, you won't be involved in that unless you have the right to veto, but that there will be a referendum if this ever happens. I can tell you now that, first of all, anything that is not in the text of the legislation, by the way, I'm a lawyer, a barrister, so I know from my own personal experience, if you don't have something in the legislative text, the promises that your politicians are making to you are not worth the paper they're written on. If they genuinely are promising you a referendum, it should be in the legal text and not as a comment afterwards. And that's what you have to ask them if this happens. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on at the moment, but that's what I've heard. So don't take any promises. We in Ireland were told when we voted no to the Nice Treaty that there would be these promises in relation to any further developments and our participation in any kind of common defence and European army. But I mean, as regards the European army, you can call it what you want. Strictly speaking, there's already an EU army there as such. It depends on how you perceive things. But the biggest issue for me is the European Defence Agency and its role in the EU institutions. And that's the Lisbon Treaty recognised and incorporated the European Defence Agency into the Lisbon Treaty. And why I just want to mention the European Defence Agency is that that was originally a lobbying by the European arms industry, and the European Armaments Agency was set up. And later on in Thessalonica in 2004, changed from the European Armaments Agency to the European Defence Agency, and it was incorporated into the EU treaties and given a status within the EU. And in the Lisbon Treaty, that enshrined it in the EU treaties to ensure that the European Defence Agency, which is basically a front for the European arms industry, it gives it a key role in how you decide what you spend your money on. And the priority for the EU is defence and defence budgets. And I just want to mention, there's two things here. One is what's called the Preparatory Action for Defence Research. Now that has been allocated a huge amount of money. In fact, the European Defence Fund has been given 8 billion over the next number of years from now to 2027. And that is going to the arms industries, and the key people to benefit are the key armaments industries in Europe. There's very little, if no talk about arms exports. As I've said already, France was up to 2020 supplying weapons, selling weapons to Russia. At the moment, we still have a situation in relation to Saudi Arabia and the arms that are being supplied there. And you look at what's happening in Yemen. So when your government are telling you that they want, because of the current crisis, they need to change the situation and you need to remove your opt-outs, I say keep those opt-outs, protect those opt-outs, because they're crucial to ensure we can at least have some sort of mechanism to try and prevent the European arms industries from calling the shots, because that's what they're doing. It's the European arms industries that decide the defence budgets of the member states. Now, that, to me, we would say in Ireland, it's like putting the fox in charge of the hen house. The arms industries are not going to say, hold on, I think we're spending too much here. Member states should spend more on social policy, on health, education, and less on defence. It's not in the European armaments industry's interest to say that. And they're the ones who are deciding the agenda. So in this referendum, it's crucial that you tell your government this is not the time to make a knee-jerk reaction on the excuse of the current war in Ukraine, because it's not going to make any difference to what's happening in Ukraine. But what it is going to make a difference to is the EU's agenda to militarise the EU to the full extent, so it's a United States of Europe with its own military capacity, and that the arms industries here can compete on the global level. And they're already benefiting them. Your taxes are going to the arms industries. And while you may not be a part of some of these things, that's key, but my government and the vast majority of governments in the EU are agreeing to this. And that's why I think it's extremely important that Denmark stands up for what's right. And I hope that with the People's Movement's help, you will actually defeat this referendum, because I think it's in the interest of peace and in the interests of social justice, it must be defeated, because it was the only thing you got when you voted no to the Maastricht Treaty, with the opt-outs. And now, slice by slice, they want to get rid of those. So, two things I'll say finally. One is, do not accept, if this legislation comes out, with footnotes. It has to be enshrined, the promise has to be guaranteed, legally guaranteed, with no opportunity for your government to weasel out of it. And secondly, the armaments industries have to be called to account. It is unacceptable that European taxpayers' money is going to the arms industry, and your opt-out is key to that, and I hope that you will protect it and vote no. And finally, I hope that the the People's Movement will live on, and that you will have a member in the European Parliament in the next Parliament, because it's crucial. It's crucial for democracy, it's crucial for the EU, and it's crucial for Denmark, Ireland, and all the countries that want accountability. And that's all I say. And enjoy the night, and happy 50th birthday.
Thank you very much, Patricia McKenna, for the encouraging words and the very comforting words. And well, I too want to demilitarize, but you gave us a lot of ammunition, so I'm happy about that.